This is Inside PHLCouncil, bringing you the latest news from Philadelphia City Council, straight from the source. Inside PHLCouncil is hosted by Joe Grace and Patty Gillett.
Hi, I'm Joe Grace, City Council's Communications Director.
And I'm Patty Gillett, Council's Deputy Communications Director. Welcome back to Inside PHLCouncil.
Patty, we've been away for a minute, as the Council President likes to say, and I'm really glad we're back. We have a lot to catch up on today, and we have a dynamic new guest that we're going to interview. First things first, we have a new council leadership team, and 4 sessions under their belt already. We got a flurry of new council legislation that's been introduced. The wage tax relief for the working poor bill is back for another try. So is the increase in the homestead exemption for homeowners. A potential November ballot question for voters on stop and frisk. Term limits for city council. Should resign to run be waived? And an important court ruling upholding the city's wage equity law. Patty, let's roll.
Yes, let's talk first about the court ruling on the city's wage equity law. In an important ruling that may have national implications, a federal appeals court has reinstated a Philadelphia law that prohibits private employers from asking prospective employers their salary history. And this is a reform initiated by council intended to narrow the pay gap between women and people of color and their white counterparts in the workplace. The ruling by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit upheld the constitutionality of the city's wage equity ordinance, which passed council unanimously and was signed into law by Mayor Kenny in 2017. Now, the law was subjected to a lengthy court challenge by Philadelphia's business community, and again, as we said, it is now upheld. And we have some reaction to the court ruling. Former Councilmember Bill Greenlee, who was the prime sponsor of the law, and he retired last December, said that it has always been council's goal throughout this process to have people be paid fairly. I'm hopeful that this legislation can have an impact in reducing the persistent racial and gender wage gap by taking salary history out of the equation.
That's a significant legal victory for the city and its efforts to level the playing field for all workers in Philadelphia. Now, Council did something else last week on this front, didn't it, Patty? What's this Department of Labor ballot question about?
Yes. So we already have a Department of Labor, which was established by Mayor Kenny during his first term. But 2 council members, Helen Gim and Bobby Heenan, put forward legislation to make the Department of Labor permanent under the city's Home Rule Charter. This is important because the Labor Department increasingly has the responsibility of enforcing the city workplace protection laws and investigating complaints about businesses who may be violating these laws. And this would include ordinances like the Fair Workweek Law passed last term and the Domestic Workers Law passed last term. So this Gim-Heenan ordinance passed council, and because it changes the charter, it needs to go to city voters who will vote on the measure on the April 28th primary ballot.
That's a pretty significant question for voters on the primary ballot. Mm-hmm. So speaking of workers, let me try updating the next one. Another council member has reintroduced legislation that offers wage tax relief for the working poor, a bill that drew some controversy in December when the mayor used a pocket veto to kill the bill. Councilmember Alan Dom's bill is pretty straightforward. The city has a big poverty problem. We have 400,000 people living in poverty. Dom's bill would cut the wage tax for people who are working in jobs, but still living at or near or below the poverty line. It would save workers an estimated $800 a year. Here's the problem. The Kenny administration says it supports the bill in theory, but wants to take a slower approach and consider the issue during the city's upcoming budget process. The bill would cost the city an estimated $25 million annually. Now, Patty, didn't council reintroduce another bill that the mayor pocket vetoed in December?
Yes, they did. It's an increase to the city's homestead exemption. The idea here was that council was approving first ever reform in the city's tax abatement, that reform was designed to phase down the abatement for new residential construction and put $300 million back in the city's accounts over 10 years for city services and all the all-important school funding. At the same time, council approved another increase in the homestead exemption, raising it by $5,000 to help homeowners facing rising property taxes that are largely fueled by gentrification.
Right.
but the mayor pocket vetoed that bill, saying let's deal with it during the budget process this spring. But as soon as council returned to session last month, Councilmember Kenyatta Johnson reintroduced the homestead exemption. It's likely headed towards approval. So that means it's heading back to the mayor's desk even before the budget process.
So this is all interesting, Patty. The mayor didn't veto any, correct me if I'm wrong, any bills from council in his first term until the final days with this pocket veto tactic. Now it seems like some conflict may be headed his way right as his second term gets underway.
Yeah, that's really not too unusual if you look at the history of mayoral and legislative relationships in Philadelphia. What is interesting is going to be interesting is how the mayor will handle this and how council responds. Council will need 12 votes to override any mayoral veto. And just for our audience to differentiate the pocket veto and the regular veto these terms we've been throwing around, when we say the mayor pocket vetoed those bills, because of we were past the last council session, the mayor didn't actually have to actively veto those bills. He just didn't sign them, and because council had no more sessions, they just didn't become law.
Right.
With these bills that are potentially headed back to his desk, he would actually have to actively veto these bills, and that would be the first time he would have done that as mayor.
These bills bear close watching, not only on their substance, but because of the procedure that you just explained quite well. So we have time for just a couple more issues. Do you want to talk briefly about stop and frisk and also term limits and resign to run?
Yes. On stop and frisk, as a reminder, the controversial policing tactic that has been blamed with thousands of police stops of minority citizens without any reasonable suspicion of wrongdoing. Council's new majority leader, Sherelle Parker, introduced legislation to ask voters the following question on the November ballot. And I'm quoting right from the ballot question. Shall the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter be amended to call on the police department to eliminate the practice of unconstitutional stop and frisk consistent with judicial precedent, meaning an officer must have reasonable suspicion that a person is engaged in criminal activity in order to stop that person? So this is an interesting because this ballot question comes at a time when stop and frisk as an issue is rising up in the national discussion in the race for president. So the timing of this almost guarantees that this is going to be an issue that we're going to hear a lot more about between now and November, both in Philadelphia, but also on the national level.
Fascinating. Stop and frisk is obviously a hot button issue, and we're going to, as you said, we're going to hear a lot more about it.
Okay. And then the other issue we want to talk about is term limits and resign to run. Council President Clark had companion bills introduced recently. The first bill would establish term limits, 5 4-year terms as the limit for the members of City Council. So Joe hears me laughing. That means 20 years, then you're out. And then the companion bill, which is key, would waive the city's resign to run law, which requires city elected officials to resign their current post before running for another office. It's not clear yet where either of these bills are going. Council President Clark told reporters who asked about it right after he introduced them, let's have the conversation.
I think it's going to be an interesting conversation.
It is going to be an interesting conversation.
Patty, we could highlight a lot more, but enough's enough. We have a new guest to introduce. You want to set this segment up for our listeners? Sure.
After the break, we'll be having a nice long discussion with Councilmember Kathy Gilmore Richardson today. She's one of our 4 new council members of City Council, and if you know anything about Councilmember Gilmore Richardson, she's very impressive. So we're excited to have her, and you'll hear from her after the break.
Can't wait.
Thanks.
Like what you're hearing? Be sure to subscribe to Inside PHLCouncil on your favorite podcast app.
Well, we're here today with Councilmember Kathy Gilmore Richardson, and we're so pleased to be here with her, and we really welcome you to Inside PHLCouncil.
Thank you, Joe. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
We're really excited to have you on the program, and you've had such an impact already in the first month in council. So the first thing we want to ask you about is gun violence, and really your first floor speech as a member of City Council. So I guess it was just about 2 weeks ago, and you made a very powerful speech about the impact of gun violence on Philadelphia, and very specifically on your family. You spoke about your cousin John Rawls, who was shot and killed in January outside his home in North Philly. So first, please accept our condolences
Thank you.
from City Council for your family's loss. Now, secondly, you're now a member of council. What do you think council's next steps to reduce and prevent gun violence should be?
So I really think that as members of council, we have to understand that we must tackle the social determinants of manifested poverty head on. Particularly in our next budget cycle, which will begin in March, we will have the unique opportunity to talk about how we legislate and appropriate dollars to community groups and leaders on the ground who are doing the necessary work to decrease gun violence and decrease poverty in our city. So I think we really need to look at community groups and organizations doing the good work. For instance, there's the Man Up PHL program, and we'll have a hearing tonight in the Committee on Public Safety in the local community in West Philadelphia at Christian Stronghold Baptist Church to talk about how we as members of City Council can do a better job of working together collaboratively with the community to decrease gun violence. We know that there's no one single solution, because if we knew the single solution, we would employ it immediately so that we don't have to face, another cousin being shot on his front steps or another baby being shot and killed in her mother's arms. So I think we know that this issue is complicated, that there's a lot of ways for us to tackle it, and I know that there's a dogged determination amongst my colleagues to collaborate and work together across government sectors and with all stakeholders in this to get the job done correctly this time.
Extremely well said. We won't have time to go into it yet in this podcast, but I'm just noting for our listeners that it was something about you saying it's a complex problem. There will be many different facets to finding solutions to this. Just noting that our new police commissioner started work yesterday and has hit the ground. And I have to assume that's going to be a key part of the conversation.
Absolutely, and we welcome our new police commissioner, Danielle Outlaw, here to the city of sisterly love, and we are excited to have her here, the first African-American woman police commissioner in the city, and I think it was really important for her to be out in the police districts yesterday, visiting with all of our rank and file members and leadership who work with members of the community each and every day. Community policing and increasing trust in the community for the police department will be very important if we are serious about, increasing our murder solve rate and increasing the amount of time that we can work with communities so we can better our communication and work together.
Totally agree.
Thank you, Cathy. This is Patty. We're going to switch gears a little bit. During the campaign and after the election, you and Councilmember Thomas both referenced being the first millennials elected to council. And just for everybody listening at home, the Pew Research Center defines millennials as those born between 1981 to 1996. So can you talk to us about why you think it's important to have millennials in local government and what you think you specifically bring to the table as being a member of this demographic?
Sure. So I think it's important to have millennials on Philadelphia City Council. We're one of the largest demographics in the city of Philadelphia. A large number of people who continue to move into our city identify with our same age group. And we are facing a set of challenges as millennials that are much different than some of the challenges that our parents or grandparents faced as they were coming along in their life. So we have student loan debt. We have gone through a great recession in 2008 and 2009 as young people, when a lot of us were just graduating from college and getting started in our careers. But also we're starting families and becoming homeowners and becoming an integral part of the Philadelphia community. So I think it's great that we have two millennials on Philadelphia City Council for the very first time, because we can identify with the very unique set of issues and challenges that millennials face, and we can take that lens when we look at any and all legislative issues that we work on.
And actually, my staff and I were joking about it yesterday, because both of you did mention this, that we were on, that you were both millennials, but we were trying to figure out who was younger.
Isaiah.
Isaiah.
So Isaiah beats me by 2 months. He's 2 months younger than me.
Oh, I
So-
didn't realize it was that narrow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so actually my birthday is in February and Isaiah's birthday is in April. We're 2 months apart. So I'm the youngest female member of council and he's the youngest male member of council. And we're both millennials, but also I'm the youngest woman to ever be elected city council at large. So that means running citywide. So we've both had a number of milestones in our race here to get to Philadelphia City Council.
Yeah, I'm just setting it straight for the record.
Yeah.
We were Googling it and during our staff meeting yesterday, and we figured it out. But
Yeah.
thank you for clarifying it. We're going to switch to something you referred to earlier, which is the City of Sisterly Love. During the last stated meeting, you made headlines again by introducing a resolution to change the city's nickname to the City of Sisterly Love for the year 2020 in honor of the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. That story went nationwide. I was on the Visit Philly website yesterday, and it is the first thing you see. It says, "Welcome to the City of Sisterly Love," so kudos to them for getting right on that. But more seriously, though, what do you hope are the key takeaways from Council's passage of this resolution, and what kind of conversation do you hope to spark about that?
Sure. So I really need to talk again about communication and collaboration and working together across sectors, because this idea of the City of Sisterly Love was really born out of a unique partnership with Visit Philadelphia, one of the marketing and tourism agencies in the city of Philadelphia, to really uplift women in the year of 2020, which is the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, but also think about and talk about the contributions of women, not only here in the city of Philadelphia, but across the United States of America. From visiting the Betsy Ross House to thinking about all the women business owners, not just in Center City, but across the city of Philadelphia, all the wonderful restaurants that are owned and run by women, all the wonderful bed and breakfast organizations like Aquaba Inn, really to just help us think about the contributions of women during this important milestone of a year, but also use it as an opportunity to uplift women business owners, to talk about wonderful historic milestones in Philadelphia, and use it as an opportunity to encourage people to come to our city, spend money in our city, and help us increase the already extraordinary work of our marketing and tourism dollars and revenue.
And in your speech, before I turn it over to Joe, in your speech, one of the things I liked that you said in acknowledging the anniversary of the 19th Amendment, you did acknowledge and point out very prominently that the 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote on paper. In practice, that was really limited to white women.
Yes.
And it was a much longer fight for women of color to get the full voting rights in this country. And you did not forget that in your speech, and I thought that was great.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something we need to continue to talk about, particularly in such an important milestone year. Just on the other side of the ledger politically, for me as an African-American woman, and just thinking about all minority women, African-American women are the backbone of a lot of voting, and is the largest voting bloc in the nation, is African-American women. So we needed to talk about and recognize that, yes, women did receive the right to vote on paper, in principle, but not in practice. And we have to continue to talk about that, because if we don't talk about our history, we don't know where we're going, and we don't have a roadmap and a footprint for the future. And it's an important conversation to have during this time politically.
I know we can't do this, and I know my co-host doesn't like when I ad-lib, but you're so expansive when you talk about things, so we won't have time to do it, but it sure would be interesting to ask the council member about the power of African-American women voters and what impact they'll have on a certain national race that's happening around us. But we won't do it. It may not be the forum or the format to do it, but I was very interested to hear you say that. That's all. We'll get back to local governance. So new term, new seat, new committee assignments.
Yes.
Council President just released these a few weeks ago. Like your mentor, Councilmember Reynolds Brown, you will chair, or you are chairing now, the Committee on the Environment. Based on your years of staffing that committee, as you were describing to us before the show, about transitioning from being a chief of staff to being a member of council. What are the priorities for the Committee on the Environment that you now see as the chair moving forward?
Sure. So I think this is a really historic time relative to environment and sustainability, and I was really thrilled and excited to be the clerk for the chair of the Committee on Environment for the last 8 years, and we worked on a lot of wonderful issues like energy benchmarking for commercial-sized buildings, more than 50,000 square feet in the city of Philadelphia, and that was an initiative that I found out about reading Governing Magazine in the nail salon, and I'm like, we have to do this in Philadelphia. So we worked with the Mayor's Office of Sustainability to make that a reality, and most recently, that legislation has been expanded before Councilwoman Reynolds Brown left her seat. However, we now face different challenges related to our environment, and we have to figure out as a committee how we work to mitigate and adapt to climate change. I mean, this is the first winter that I can remember in a long time in the city of Philadelphia. We haven't seen 1 ounce of snow. I'm going to say knock on wood.
Literally.
But literally not 1 ounce of snow thus far, and we're in February. So, it's not a lot of days and weeks of winter left.
No.
So I think, we all are recognizing and realizing based on the temperature changes in our environment that climate change is real and that we have to do all that we can as a city council and as members of the Committee on Environment to ensure that we are pushing all of our city departments to incorporate sustainable changes into their planning going forward, particularly around budgeting, to ensure that they budget to ensure that they're increasing their sustainability practices in the administration of the work of their department. And I think during the budget process, we're going to take a keen look and interest in that, but also as the chair of the committee, we've coordinated an environmental roundup, which will be later this month, where we've invited all of the environmental organizations to come to City Hall, meet with us here in City Council, meet all the members of the Committee on Environment, and tell us what their priorities are so that we can begin to address those issues in the Committee on Environment. And we're going to do that twice a year.
What a smart move. Forgive me. But what a smart move. I want to slide one more question in before I turn it back over to my colleague. And I don't know if you have plans for this yet. I actually don't know that. But obviously a huge environmental issue would be the future and the fate of the refinery.
Yes.
For our listeners down in South Philadelphia, everybody is generally aware of it.
Yes.
It's been shuttered since last summer, I think.
Yeah.
It's all tied up in bankruptcy. There's proposals, counter proposals.
Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts on that?
Sure, and I think it's important that we include all the community members on the future of that site and work with the community to ensure that whatever happens at that site is safe and that it's equitable development and growth on that site, but that it's also sustainable moving forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And as you have said, again, you're making the transition from staffer to council member, as others have made before you. And you said over the years, you did every job in Councilwoman Reynolds Brown's office, from intern to chief of staff. We've spoken to other members of council who've made that transition from staffer to member, and that includes Council Member Green, Sanchez. I guess Parker will fit in that category as well. And there's a recurring theme that they've told us, that they juggle different priorities, and there's never enough time in the day, and it's hard for them to not want to do everything because you can, and you generally want to, and you're nodding your head because we know you, and that's something you'd want to do. So what is your planned strategy for running a highly effective and productive council office, which right out of the gate you were certainly doing, but without burning yourself out?
And without burning my staff out. So so it's true. I've worked in every position in council except communications. And you really feel the impetus to try to continue to do the work, but effective leaders enable and empower their team members to be even more effective leaders. So that's what I have to continue to work on in this transition to council, is empowering my team members to lead their work and their efforts, and to give them the independence and ability to do that. And while we're doing that, work as a cohesive unit to get the job done. So I need to, take the step back from the staffer and be the member of council, and we're working on that every single day.
Every single day?
Every day.
What would your staff say if I asked them?
They would say, she's doing better.
She's doing better. and again, just I'm going to add a little subset to this question because it circles back a little bit to the millennial question, and the fact that we have younger members of council on now, and that many of you, and I would not just ask this question to you because you were a woman, many of you, as I included, have small children.
Oh, yes.
and I will ask this question: how do you do that? How are you planning to do that? It's not easy.
So every day I wake up and know that I have to give it all that I have, and do that until the very end of the day, whenever the end comes, and I wake up with that same determination the next day. My children are so young. They're 3, 5, and my bonus daughter is 14. So the 3 and the 5-year-old, they don't understand city council. They don't know what this is. When I walk in the door, I am mommy. So I have to maintain that part of my life and give them the normalcy that they need and deserve, while also being an effective public servant for people in the city of Philadelphia. So how I do that every day, I'm a very spiritual and religious person. So when I wake up, I give praise and honor to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and I ask him to give me all the power and thoughts and wisdom to do the best that I can do that day, and I get up and do it again the next day. And I don't make the 100% mark every day, and that's okay, but I give it all that I have every single day. And I'm a working mother, and we always talked about our hashtag, working moms just get the job done, and moms get the job done. So my husband still wants a home-cooked meal, and not from time to time, all the time. So that's the one part that I have to work on is the meal planning. So that's the one part that I would give myself an F grade. But everything else, yeah, I would say F, because I have to do a better job of that because I don't have time to get to the market anymore. So that's the one part that I know I have to do more. But other than that, I get up every day and give it all that I have to the people that we serve and to my family, and just do it again every single day. And I try to do it with a smile.
Awesome. I have one inside PHL Council question. This is, and you can answer this because you've been a staffer. I don't think people understand this. What's your average day length as a council member, as a member of council?
I would say, as far as just like work hours, about 18 hours, and the other 6 hours when I'm supposed to be resting and sleeping. Your brain is constantly moving and thinking about the issues of the day or things that have happened, or looking at the news and just thinking about how we can make a difference for all the issues that we see going on in the city. So it's really 24/7, but an actual work day, I would say at least 18 hours, and then your mind is going the other 6.
As somebody who's worked those jobs before, I just want to say 2 things. One, you're very impressive.
Thank you.
Please take that as a heartfelt comment. And we expect great things out of you. We really do. Watch those hours.
Yes.
Heartfelt advice from a team that is here to communicate with you and support you. Watch those hours. As somebody who's been on the staff side of those hours before, it's a long journey.
Yeah.
It's a long journey, and you are clearly in it for the long haul. It's so obvious. It's a long journey. So watch those hours for you and your staff. Okay. But very, very impressive conversation. Very, very impressive beginning for you, and we're so genuinely excited to continue to work with you.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity and all the work that you and your team have been doing. We truly appreciate the opportunity to have a podcast in City Council. This is groundbreaking. So we thank you so much for doing all the work that you do to help lift us up each and every day.
I have to say thank you, Councilwoman. I get to say Councilwoman. One of the things is that as a staffer, I've been here for 5 years, so I got used to saying Cathy in the hallway on the 5th floor. So it's really interesting to have to remember to say council member, which is a good problem to have.
Thank you.
Visit our website, phlcouncil.com, where you can subscribe to this show, get contact information for each council office, learn more about our legislation, and find dates for upcoming hearings and meetings. Follow us on social media. We're PHL Council on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you enjoyed this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app. Inside PHL Council is produced by Philadelphia City Council. This episode is adjourned to the call of the next upload. Thanks for listening.